everyone. This is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy. Be sure to check out our blog and our YouTube channel and our newsletter and our great sponsors, Italy Rooting, Phil Italy, and Aviativa Casa. And today I'm welcoming back former guest Bill Sallurday. And Bill's going to give us some insight on how he built an awesome database in his hometown. So welcome, Bill. Thanks for being here.
Great, Bob. Thanks for having me back. Appreciate it.
No, it's great to have you again and see you. So just before we get into, everything that you built and found, just, give us a little bit about where the family's from and when they came to the U.S.
Yeah. So my story is unique. I'll probably touch upon it a little bit more in some of these charts that I'll share. But with the name like Sallurday, I grew up knowing I was Italian, but no one believed Sallurday was an Italian name. And so that kind of, set me on this journey to try to understand what my real Italian last name was. And no one really knew. There were rumors about it, but no one really knew with any definitive answers to say, yeah, it's this name and it's from this village in Italy. And so I was searching for 35 years before I finally broke through just a couple of years ago and identified the hometown, identified the real last name, which happens to be Sabato, which is Saturday in Italian. So it's not so much of a stretch. But after I found the village, I found cousins that are still living there, cousins that are living in the same home that my great-great-grandparents lived in. It's been an awesome experience. I actually did have the opportunity to go over and visit. And it's just been, it was a lifelong dream fulfilled when I finally made that final connection, the final piece of the puzzle. So it was really, really rewarding.
I know everybody feels that way when they come back. It's a life-changing experience, right?
Yeah, it was cool. And what's even cooler is I think everybody's got this, connection to their hometown. And this hometown of mine is a tiny, mountain town outside of Salerno called San Cipriano Picentino, which is, again, it's maybe 15 minutes outside of Salerno. Salerno, if you don't know, right, is along the Amalfi Coast. And so it's just this spectacular environment to be able to call home, right? And then the visit there and exploring the area is just beyond belief in terms of how it happened. So it's just really an awesome experience. And, through that journey of looking over 30 years or 35 years or whatever, over the last few years, once I identified that the town of San Cipriano was the home village, I really started honing in on that village and building out a database of basically every Sabato and Genealogy that I found, right, that were my great-grandparents. My great-grandfather was a Sabato. His parents were a Sabato and a Genealogy. And so once I made that final connection, I started going through the town records and identifying every Sabato, every Genealogy, and I would start logging them into a tree. And then over the course of the last couple of years, that tree has exploded into over 8,000 people. And then I've been able to connect, different, orphan families, if you will, within the tree, connecting them together. And as I connect them together, it's starting to really unfold all of the connections in that village. So it's been amazing. And then working with people who were on a Facebook group for the village, I've actually then been able to share with them that, hey, I've got, this database of people from San Cipriano. And so now people are searching me out to say, can you help me find my, American cousins that immigrated in the 60s or the 50s or the 70s, right, that we lost track of? Can we reconnect them? And so I was able to start working my way through the trees, connecting them to people here in the U.S. And then similarly in the U.S., identifying, people that have roots in that village, helping them understand that that is their hometown. I'd reach out to them proactively and say, hey, did you know that your great-great-grandparents' home village was San Cipriano? and I can help you fill in the gaps, right? And then from that, it started to be, hey, I want to go visit this village, right? I want to meet my cousins that are there. And so I started promoting that a little bit more and working with the village to try to build out an itinerary for people that go to the village, and what can they do? How can they really, truly, engulf themselves in the entire experience of being in that village? So it's been really cool. And it got to the point where the village itself, the mayor, awarded me with honorary citizenship to the village for my efforts. They wanted to recognize, my efforts in maintaining community, and how important it is in Italy, and then showing that, hey, we can still connect, San Cipriano, this little village, in the mountains of Salerno. I showed a map of, where their reach is throughout the world, right? That I've been able to identify, right? People from San Cipriano immigrated to a lot of in the U.S., but South America and Australia, et cetera. So it's just really cool for them to see and for me to see. So it's been an awesome journey.
Yeah, and that's fantastic that they, recognize that and everything. So I know you're going to go through your presentation here a little bit that'll help people, either starting or if they're from San Cipriano or whatever, get them started and maybe building a database.
Yeah. Yeah. So why don't let's jump in, right? We'll jump into this. And again, I'll share a little bit about my history, but then I'll share a couple of tips and tricks that I've identified over the last few years to really help people understand how they can do this, right? Not only for their village, but then helping others. Because I really, I want to become that kind of, central resource to help people connect back to that village, right? So there's so many people out there to thank for their efforts in the genealogy world to try to help you identify and get to that hometown. But then when I look at that hometown of having all of these, people connected and these family units connected, I think it's really interesting. And so, hopefully what I've done here will help more people, right? To date, I think I've helped over 20 people on both sides of the ocean to connect and reconnect with cousins. And hopefully that just continues to grow, and hopefully we continue to drive tourism to that little, the town in Italy that, hey, could benefit from the, economic impact of having people come and spend money in the town. So pretty cool. But let's jump in. I said like how it started, right? How it started was really me trying to unravel this generational mystery, and a 30-year search to find my true last name. And it's been awesome. And then how it's going, right? It went from that, not knowing where I was from or what my last name was, to actually being awarded this honorary citizenship in the village of my great grandfather, which is really amazing. And then connecting others back to the commune, like I said, helping 20 other people or so to connect, either to or from that village. And then really what I'm trying to do now is just promote ancestral tourism back to that village, right? So I've created and said, on my trip back, we did a few things. On my next trip back, I want to do a few other things. And if I'm going over there for, a once in a lifetime trip, this is what I would love to be able to do. Right. And so I'm working with, the community leaders, the tourism people that are in the village. I reached out. It was another crazy story. The gentleman that owns a B&B in the area posted that he had Americans staying with him, and they wanted to find connections to their cousins that were living in the village. Had the information. So while they were guests at his B&B, I actually went through and I created, trees and documents and sent it over to him. And he was able to then present it to his guests from Boston and said, here you go. Like, here's your family. And they were amazed. They've since reached out to me afterwards and said, this is amazing. We're going to share this with our cousins and blah, blah, blah. So I just take great joy in being able to assist in it. So it's been really cool. And so, again, I think what happened here is this ancestral research opened my eyes to ancestral tourism, right? There's so many people that I think are in my shoes that want to experience that. And so I'll do whatever I can to help others experience that. my quest was crazy with a bunch of twists and turns, and I've actually documented it into a blog that I've got that's, it's listed under my blog on Wandering Spectator, called From Sabato to Sallurday, right? How did I get from that Sabato to becoming Joseph Sallurday? So what you're seeing there is the headstone of, my great-grandfather that immigrated from San Cipriano. An amazing story with a lot of twists and turns. And if anybody's interested in, if they're thinking about giving up, I'd suggest you read that article, because it's just been an amazing journey, and never give up. So I talk about San Cipriano Picentino, where it is at the kind of the base of the Amalfi Coast. It's known for their farming and crops, and they've got one of the world's best wineries, a little off the radar winery called Montevetrano, that's right in the commune. And then they do their annual Chestnut Festival, which to me was amazing, by the way, right? I grew up, with my father having chestnuts, right? Around Christmas time, we'd roast chestnuts. And I remember him saying, yeah, my father used to do it. So, we eat chestnuts. And now here to come to find out that the village in San Cipriano has an annual chestnut festival that is on my bucket list, and I will go celebrate with them one time. And it's pretty cool connection. As I said, once I discovered this, I think I discovered it in maybe 2020. COVID's got everybody messed up, but it was either 21 or 22 is when I identified the village. And April of 23, I made the journey over there. I met with cousins, explored the area. It was just awesome, right? And then we stayed in Salerno outside of the village. And if anyone's ever interested in exploring the area around there, Salerno is an awesome place to set up base camp. But it was just very cool. So I wrote up my little time over there in another Wandering Spectator post called Wandering in Italy.
Just to stop you for a second, Bill. So you went. So the first time we talked, I guess it was just as COVID was starting, maybe, or something like that. So you went since then.
Yeah,
you hadn't gone in, right?
Yeah, I think when
cool.
we had talked, Bob, I think with the last time we talked, I think I might have just discovered the village. Either it was just at the cusp of discovering it, but I hadn't made connections to the cousins yet.
Right. Yeah.
And so I found it, and there's like I said, the twists and turns of that are just like, happenstance was unbelievable in this Facebook group for the village. And for the audience out there, if you're searching Facebook group or Facebook, and their groups are awesome for this, because there's a group in the village that talks about, the people of San Cipriano. And so by joining that, I started monitoring a lot of the comments, and then someone posted a street scene painting of Via Capel, the street in the village. And that street sounded familiar to me. So I was like, man, this is really interesting. So I went through my notes, and I find that my great-great-grandparents lived on Via Capel. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so I pull up Google Street View of Via Capel, and I match the painting with Google Street View. And I was like, this is really cool. Now I'm seeing like a Google Street View image with this painting. And when I zoom in on Google Street View on the door that's in the, in the home of one of the homes in the painting, it's number 4. And number 4 Via Capel is where my great-great-grandparents lived. My mind was like blown, that I was like, you got to be kidding me. Here's this painting that somebody randomly posted, and it just happens to be the home of my great-great-grandparents. And so I commented on that photo and said, my gosh, my great-great-grandparents lived in number 4 Via Capel. Next thing you know, a gentleman, Massimiliano Sabato, comments and says, my parents live in number 6 Via Capel. And so I start communicating with him. And then we, right after that, made the connection. I find Massimiliano's parents and his grandparents, and it turns out that his great-grandfather and my great-grandfather were brothers. I mean, just mind-blowing.
I know. And, I tell people the same thing. Facebook is an awesome tool. I mean, it's not good for a lot of things, but for finding family in Italy, it's pretty good. And just within the last few days, maybe it was 5 days ago, I got a message from, I think Guglielmo he's either second cousin or second cousin once removed or something like that, but fairly close, considering I didn't know I had any Sorrentino cousins until just 5 days ago, still alive.
Crazy.
And it was crazy because he messaged me and said, I know of your grandfather and his brother that came to America. And I said, so well, who are you? And I thought I knew of my grandfather and his brother here. I knew they had a sister in Italy who was a nun, Sister Alfonsina. There's another name which I wasn't totally sure of. Wasn't positive about this Carlo. That I have to ask them some more, but they didn't mention them. But they gave me the names of two other sisters, three other sisters, and two sisters and two brothers that remained in Italy that I had up until
amazing.
5 days ago. I had no clue.
That's awesome. Well, now you got to go back again.
We'll be right back.
Experience Italy like never before, traveling with a scheduled group or create your own bespoke tour with friends with philitaly.co. Pack your bags and follow Phil. That's www.philitaly.co.
Well, yeah, we're planning to go. Well, what's interesting is we're planning to go. We've been twice since I talked to you, but we're planning on going next May. And we're going to start in Milan and do Bologna and Florence because we've never been to the north yet. And it just so happens two of the cousins live in Milan.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there are no accidents. I'm convinced there are no accidents.
No question, right? No question. And speaking of happy accidents, when we were leaving Salerno, we jump on the train to go back to Rome, and we were going to stay in Rome that evening for an early morning flight the next day. And so we were just going to take the train to Rome and hang and explore Rome a little bit. We had been to Rome several years prior. We get to Rome, and I don't know, we're in a zone or whatever. We totally forget to get off the train. And I was like, uh-oh, we're moving again. And we just missed our stop. And then my wife was like, where are we going? We'll just get off at the next stop. And the next stop is Florence. So we ended up, happy accident, we ended up spending the afternoon in Florence, a quick trip to Florence, and then turned around and came back. And instead of exploring Rome more, we got to explore Florence for a day. So another happy accident. But yeah, so pretty cool. And I just think like I said, through that whole process, what happened in me really trying to find out, what my real last name was this unintended consequence of creating a database of 8,000 people, right, that are connected to the commune. And so, now I've helped over 20 people connect, and, I'm addicted to it. I said, it's like, when I was a kid, I used to collect baseball cards, right? Now I'm collecting people from San Cipriano, and I'm just adding them to this database and trying to, do what I can to connect it. And some cool stuff. Like there's a kid that I grew up with in Scranton, Pennsylvania that, I come to find out when I'm doing this genealogy stuff, I come to find out that he had, his great grandparents were from the same village, San Cipriano. I knew him growing up. We never discussed it. Right. But it's just kind of cool to see now how the world really is connected and what a small world it really is. So, yeah, and then the unintended consequence of just helping to drive tourism to the village. I got a call one day. I shouldn't say a call, but somebody posted in a genealogy group on Facebook that they were trying to find these, their ancestors in the village, and they knew it was San Cipriano. So I started reaching out to her and said, hey, here's what I have on your family. By the way, connect to this group because they can help you out. next thing you know, she was leaving the following week for a trip to the Amalfi Coast. Well, she was like, hey, I'm going to make a side trip over to San Cipriano. So she connected with people in the group, and the people in the group that were helping me connected her with the mayor. She went in and met with the mayor and, looked at the records and met cousins in the village and everything else. So it's just really cool. And she was super thankful for me being able to connect her with somebody in the village, right? That said, hey, come on in and we'll help you discover more about your family. So.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So how did I do this, right? It's just, these are just a couple of the sources that I used, right? Antenati. I think everybody uses Antenati. If you don't know what it is, you should be using it if you're trying to find Italian roots. But I've got some tips and tricks that I'll talk about that. I use Family Tree Maker, desktop software. It's just, what you'll see on the right, the top graph is the chart as it shows in Ancestry.com, and on the bottom is the chart that it shows in Family Tree Maker. I use both and I sync them, and they both have their pluses and minuses, but I use those tools. Another tool that was really helpful for me, is Steve Morse. I don't know if you're familiar with that website, but Steve Morse has a website that makes it really easy to search immigration records. At least that's what I really use it for, searching immigration records. And I'll share a little bit of that. There's another website of records for Salerno that are out there called the Salerno draft lists that have been extremely helpful to me. And then newspapers.com, is something else that I use to get in. And I use newspapers to help me do a lot of my blog writing too. I think I told you I do some Black Hand Mafia writing about some of the nefarious activities of some of the early Italian immigrants, but newspapers has a lot of information in it. So with Antenati though, right? So yeah, everybody's probably using Antenati, and it took me a while. Maybe you guys know this, maybe you don't, but what I ended up doing was creating a series of bookmarks for everything in the town. So when you go into Antenati and you want to search the birth records for Antenati, it'll say, okay, well, where do you want to start? We've got records from 1809 all the way up to 1915 or whatever for birth records. So instead of creating them or searching one at a time and trying to search through, I took the time and the effort to basically build a set of bookmarks for every single thing, every set of records in that village, right? And I'll show you, what I've done here. And then once you create that bookmark, I kind of organize them in subfolders for each, right? And so when you look at this will give you an idea of what I did, right? So in my bookmark bars, I'll have SCP births, for example. You'll see SCP births, San Cipriano births over here. And then I've got a subfolder, for example, from 1900 to 1915. And then within that subfolder, you'll see from 1900 all the way down to 1915. So now, when I'm looking for something, I don't have to research and go back through and say, okay, I'm looking at San Cipriano for the births for 1915 and then search it that way. I can literally go to the bookmark and click on the bookmark and it'll take me there. The other important thing with that, I said, is to take the bookmark and have it go directly to the index page. So a lot of these records, instead of going to page 1 of the index, which would normally happen if you go through a normal search for it, but you can bookmark the index page. And so for me, I go now right to the first index page for births. And it's super, super helpful, right? That I can go right there. I can kind of go in and I can start looking for it immediately.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's
right.
Super.
So, and then the other thing is, once it's like set up in your cache memory on your computer, then it even quicker, right? So instead of waiting for it to chunk through and do all this stuff, it's in your cache and it'll bring it up much quicker. So it saved a ton of time. The other thing I did was, if there was no index, so some of these things, the worst part is, okay, you go through a site and it says, okay, I'm going to go look for the 1878 birth records of San Cipriano. Well, guess what? There is no index page. So you got to go through, 100 pages. And so what I'm doing now is working my way through for a set of records for that year, say birth records for 1868 or whatever the year is. And if there's no index page, I'm literally taking the time to go through one by one and saying, okay, Giuseppe Sabato was born to these parents and these were his birth dates. So I'm going in and I'm creating, an orphan family with those parents and that child. And I create that. And I do that for if there's 900 or, 96 pages of, like in this case here in 1915, there's 86 pages of records. I'd go through one by one and add each one of those families, into my database. And then that way I know now if I go back to say, hey, I'm looking for somebody that might have been born around 1868 for a Sabato, I don't have to go through 86 pages all again. I know that I've completely indexed that record. It's done. That set of records, I don't have to worry about, trying to page through 86 pages again. So it's been interesting. I think the other thing is too, when you go into a village like this, it's not uncommon for all the names to be the same, right? Like, so, there's a lot of common names. And so when you do that, then all of a sudden you can start to, like, if someone were to look at this, page, this index, they would be going, my gosh, how do you even read that? How do you even know what names are there? But the reality is once you start researching, you're going to start to know what the common names are in that, in that village. And it becomes kind of second nature when you look at it. So instead of trying to, understand cursive handwriting, it becomes kind of second nature because you know what you're looking for. So anyway, pretty interesting stuff, I think, when you go through the Antenati records.
Yeah, all my relatives, all my ancestors were indexed by the guy who can't write.
Oh yeah, I definitely have some of those, right? You go through and it's like, seriously, somebody teach this person how to use penmanship. On the other hand, there's some that are spectacular, and I've got no room to talk. So
no, meaning no, I know where I'm the same way.
The more I type, the less I write. Another key thing for me was the ability to have two monitors. So if you're going to dive into doing this type of research, you got to have two monitors, right? Some people have a vertical monitor where it's actually, instead of set up on, landscape mode, it's set up on portrait mode, right? And so the index that's out there or the record that's out there, they're on kind of portrait mode, right? And so some people would actually turn their monitors around and view it that way. But regardless of how you're going to do it, two monitors makes it so easy because then instead of flipping tab to tab, you can actually set up your data entry, in Family Tree Maker or Ancestry on one screen and your source record on another, and you can start keying the information in without flipping back and forth. So to me, that was also a kind of a lifesaver. But those are the things on Antenati that I think, make a lot of sense, and being able to do it that way. And by the way, not all records are out there, right? I got so lucky that San Cipriano had a bunch of records out there. And then the surrounding villages that are there are in the records as well. So, again, there are no accidents, right? That somebody wanted me to find that, my family after 30 years. So kind of worked out well. As I said, I use Family Tree Maker. There's some great reports that I can generate there. To me, it's easier data entry. When I'm doing these things, I like to actually enter the data in Family Tree Maker and then sync it back to Ancestry. And then what I am doing, just so everybody's clear, is I literally have one database for the commune. I call it San Cipriano Families. And
that's a great idea. I never thought of that. That's really smart.
Yeah, just when you put it in, it's all in one database. And as you're adding, now you see down the, in Family Tree Maker, at least on the left side, you've got a list of all of the people. And so when I add in, another, my 45th Giuseppe Sabato, right? Because there's tons of them. You'll see where it falls. And when you put the birth date in, it kind of, sorts it by birth date order for Giuseppe Sabatos. And then when you do that, I always kind of search around to say, hey, is this Giuseppe Sabato similar to the other ones? And when you start looking at that, it'll find duplicates. And sometimes, Family Tree Maker will actually tell you, hey, is this Giuseppe Sabato the same as the one you've already entered in, right? Because it's already lined up the birth dates. And then when it is, you start merging those contacts together, and it, unfortunately, it helps you shrink the tree, right? Because you've got now duplicates in there, and it'll delete one duplicate, but it's also then connecting, other families together, which is really cool. And like I said, so that's what it's really doing is it's, your ability to see those individuals and then work through, and connecting those floating trees or those orphan networks or whatever you want to call them, within your database. So it works out really well. Ancestry, right? So I've been a subscriber to Ancestry for, I don't even know, decades, right? Since the very, very early days of subscriptions. I think I was a member of Ancestry. It does sync with Family Tree Maker. The cool thing now, and one of the tools they have in their Pro Tools is this the heat map, and that's one of the maps that I sent over to the people of San Cipriano, and was like, hey, here's your reach. The little village in in Italy, where all the shades of green are within the U.S., there's people that have connections to San Cipriano. So it's really cool to see a really cool visual to see how, that one village is basically spread out throughout the world. And again, are there others throughout? Yes, I haven't gotten to them. I had somebody that was in Brazil reach out to me and said, hey, what about us? Like we're in Brazil. You don't have us on the map. And I'm like, well, hey, let me find out. How are you connected? And I added them back into the database and then redid everything. Right? Now it shows, okay, so now I've got connections going down into, into Brazil. So it's kind of cool. Like just a neat visual. Steve Morse, I have the URL here. It's an awesome, user interface, I guess I'll call it, to allow you to go search the passenger lists and do it in a fashion that, you can get creative with searches. And I think that's the other thing that across all of these, whenever you're doing genealogy, I think you do have to get creative in terms of how you're searching for things. Between, name spellings, accents, you name it. You really have to think outside the box. You can't just go and say, I'm looking for, Joseph Sallurday. And if I don't find Joseph Sallurday, I'm done, right? So that's what you really have to get creative in terms of how you're looking for stuff, right? Again, through my records and my search, Joseph Sallurday had probably at least 6 different spellings of his last name, right? So same thing is true when you're looking at, passenger lists. So what I've been able to do there through Steve Morse, I've been searching for, anybody that came to the U.S. that listed their home village as San Cipriano Picentino. Well, that's not always the case, right? They're gonna, it's gonna get misspelled. It's gonna get misinterpreted. It's gonna be punctuated differently. And so what I've done, this will give you an idea. When you go into Steve Morse, I use this gold passenger gold form. So it does this search of Ellis Island records in one step, it's called. And so within it, when you click on that link, it'll say, for example, the town name starts with or is. And so, hey, if you put in s.cip, it's going to come up with a list of people that listed anything that starts with SCIP that's been transcribed into the list. It'll bring up that person or those people. And so when it does that, if I got that hit, I would kind of call through that list and say, okay, these people, Now, maybe there's a town in Spain that might have that as well. Well, you can filter out by saying, just give me the ethnicities, down here of, Italian. So there's unique ways that you can kind of filter that list through. And then, oh, by the way, you'll see last names that all start to line up with the same village, right? So through that and through these unique searches, right, I would look, for example, I put the common names of the commune in. Give me the names Sabato that are from Italy. Give me Giannattasio's that are from Italy, right? Give me, Muratas or whatever the name was. And it would start, I would look at those lists and I would see where they were from. Through that process, I created another list of about 500. Let me see, did I put it in here? No, I didn't put it in here. But I created another list of over 500 people that listed some sort of San Cipriano as their hometown, right? So they came to the U.S., they listed San Cipriano of some sort. It was a transcribed, however, and now I'm working through that list to connect them back to the village as well. So those are, people that came to the U.S. and stayed in the U.S. and now working to connect those families back to Italy. So again, it's another really cool way to see, who's come from that village and document them. If you've got ancestors in Salerno, in the Frazione or whatever you want to call it, right? The greater Salerno, not the town of Salerno. But you can go into the Salerno draft lists and do some interesting searches. So I was able to go through and say, give me all of the Sabatos that lived in San Cipriano. And you'll see up here there were 6 pages of them, right? So what did I do? The crazy maniac that I am, I went through and said, hey, there's a Pietro Antonio Sabato. His parents were Pasquale and Lucia Barbarito. He was born on November 4th, 1840. I would log that person into the database. And then I'd go down to the next one, another one, and I'd log it into the database. So I would just go through and I was adding all of these people into the database. And as you add these people with these parents, again, you'll start to see these networks and these families form, and you'll start to kind of add them together. So, but anyway, the draft lists are fantastic. You can search by name, put the parent's name in. You can do contained searches. So same thing. You don't have to nail the transcription. You could say, the village of where they were born, it contains Picentino. It's a good way to do that. And then I use Chrome on a lot of these sites to do the automatic translation, right? Still don't speak any Italian, but I communicate frequently with the people in Italy using Google Translate and, other tools.
Yeah, I do the same. Yeah.
I mean, it seems to work out well. But yeah, then that's it, right? Then I go through newspapers and I say, when I was looking for San Cipriano, I would go in and I would do a search in newspapers. And, again, same thing, varying how I would search newspapers to find anybody connected to that village. And here's a couple examples, right? One thing was interesting. I was able to find hey, during the World War II, when the Americans came on shore in Salerno, there was an article here, the American Fifth Army took San Cipriano Picentino, right? It's just pretty amazing that, to think that the village in 1943 was, controlled, by the Nazis, basically, right? Just amazing. But then you look and, then you find obituaries, right? Martinangelo, which is a common name in the village. Well, there you go, right? They were residing in S. Cipriano Picentino, Salerno. So, and again, once I see that, I'm adding that. Anytime I would see that, I'd add it to the database, and then I would start, connecting these people, randomly. So, and again, get creative in your searches, right? Search by adjacent days, search for, variations of spelling of the village, search by the Americanized name, that might show up. all those things could really help you in the search. So through all of that, right, over the last couple of years, I then created a dedicated web page on my site that basically includes a few things. I talk about like what I did, how I did it a little bit, and then I've created some reports to put out there. So I've got an index of individuals. It's 177 pages of a PDF that's got every person that I've documented in the 8,000 people. And for each one of those, it includes their name, the date of birth, the marriage, date of death, and their spouse's name. Right. So if anybody's looking, they can easily look, scan through that report online and search for their, great grandparent or whatever, and see if I've recorded. Easy way to do that. And if they want to get in deeper, I give them steps to access the tree on Ancestry. How you can go through, set up a free account on Ancestry, and then access that tree. And then they can go and start doing some interesting searches, look for their tree, print out reports, whatever. I've included the index of individuals who migrated to the U.S., which was basically the 500 people that I captured through Steve Morse. And then, just a fun report, a listed surnames in the database by count. So you could see, the most common surname in the village, Sabato, Genealogy. They both happen to be one of the more popular ones in the village, which made it pretty difficult to log everything. But was able to do it that way. So, there's activity on that website. People then reach out to me and say, hey, my contact information's out there. They'll reach out to me and say, can you help me find my cousins or whatever? And so I'll do what I can to continue to just help out there. People will say, how much do you charge for your service? I don't. I just, I do it for free. I do what I can, right? So that's the downside of free is like, I have no guarantee that I'm going to find anything. I have no guarantee I'm going to spend a ton of hours, but I'm going to do what I can for free. It is a passion of mine. And if I can help them find them, I will. But I just find it, it's fun to do and, so be it. So, but that's pretty much it. So what I said, right? Everybody that's out here is interested in this, ancestry piece and their Italian roots. But I say by discovering your ancestors, you could be helping to drive the economy of your ancestral village too, right? The more that you know about your village, the more that, you can help others discover that same village, the more it's going to help that village. And, we all know that, hey, everybody would love to increase tourism. And I think that can really help some of the villages in Italy. We know improved data sets and technology are continuously made available. There's no way I would have found my cousins if it weren't for the technology that's available today. DNA, I'm a believer in using DNA for Ancestry, and it helped me tremendously. There's always new resources and source documents being added, even to Antenati. They continue to add more records to that. There's more people searching for their ancestors, which, oh, by the way, as you do this, you're going to find photos, right, that others have posted, right. The more you connect with other people, right? So it's really cool. And then I say, be creative in your searches and never give up. So, don't get locked in on Joseph Sallurday. You'll never find him in Italy, but you will find a Giuseppe Sabato. So, and they just keep powering through. But that's it. And then I said, I've got like, I won't go through this, but I've got like, what the proposal that I sent over to Italy that said, hey, if, the Tourism Board of Italy, if I were you, here's what I would be promoting at a minimum, to Americans that want to come and experience the village.
Yeah, I know. I try the same thing.
Yeah. And I don't know, I said the honorary citizenship, somebody, when somebody asked me, well, Jesus, can you travel amongst Europe now or whatever? I'm like, no. It's a little harder than that to become a citizen of Italy. I won't get into anything beyond that for here in the U.S., but, you can't just show up over there and become a citizen. That being said, I did read recently that, that the village can play a major part in supporting and sponsoring your request for citizenship. And so some of the folks in San Cipriano were basically said that hey, we're cutting back on how people can get citizenship. But what Bill is doing, are the things that we should be looking at, right? Those that have an allegiance to the country and whatnot. So we'll see where that goes at some point. You never know. That I would love to go over there and spend extended periods in the village and hang out there and explore Italy more. And who knows where that'll lead. But yeah, it'd be awesome to become a dual citizen.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I got a couple of more pieces of paper. Well, there's stuff from Italy I have. There's a couple of things I need from here to get that's taken forever, from New York State. I got to get some from my mom and thing like that. But the one thing that I do have, which is really, really good, is from both my mother. I was going to go through my father, but they said my mother would be easier. And neither one of her parents became citizens. And I was able to get the document here, saying that they never became citizens, and that they said in Italy that's like a huge
thing,
they didn't
because
it's very hard to get.
Yeah, right. They didn't renounce their citizenship to become an American citizen. So
so they said,
yeah, and I think that's I explored that too, and I didn't go into a ton of detail on it. I know the Sallurday going down that path was probably a non-starter, just because of the name changes and, really proving that, Joseph Sallurday truly is Giuseppe Sabato, right? I'm sure DNA would do it, but they're not going to do DNA, right? So, but the reality is on my grandmother's side, my dad's mother was 100% Italian. She, there could have been a path there, but now I think that the new rules are basically cutting that out. She was born in the U.S. Her parents were born in Italy, but I think they renounced their citizenship before she was born.
Well, what happened with my father, I would have been okay with him. And then they said, well, before they changed the law, they said, well, some of the courts don't like it because your father was a minor when your grandfather became a citizen. Some of the courts don't like it, and now they said if you were under 21 when your father became a U.S. citizen, you're done. But I'm able to go through my mother through the 1948 law because I was born in 51. So, and her, there's no question with her stuff. So, like I said,
now it's just a waiting game, right? Now it's just
Yeah, I'm going through the court, so it'll be faster once I get these last couple of pieces of paper from here, and then I'm hoping it's going to be relatively quick. I'm doing it mostly for my kids. I mean, for me, I'm 73. What am I going to do with it? But I want the kids to have it because it's good for them.
I do think. I think it's for same thing, right? It's just anybody that's doing a lot of ancestral research to be able to grab that is like that's the final piece, right? That hey, this is
exactly.
Whether what benefits come with it are, it doesn't matter. It's insignificant, right? But just to be able to seal that fate that hey, I truly am a dual citizen, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks, Bill. I really appreciate it. This has been good stuff, and hopefully, we educate a few people on some tips on the Antenati and how to set up those indexes and tools to use. And I didn't know about Robert Morse. I think the back of my head, I think I heard of it, but I've never tried it, so I'm going to check that out for sure.
Yeah, Steve Morse. Yeah,
Steve Morse.
Yeah, it works great. I mean, for me, I used it a long time ago. When I was doing this search back in the probably in the 90s, I was using the tool. But now to do again, I guess that just goes to show like how you think about the research. You need to revisit the tools you used prior, right? To figure out how can I leverage that tool set today. And so by going through and doing unique things like that and the way you search and whatnot was really helpful. And you could do those types of searches with Ancestry, but the user interface is not as crisp when it's all said and done. And to be able to take that data, for true projects where you're looking at a village and saying, I'm going to try to document everyone from that village. I think that, using that tool, Steve Morse tool, is much easier than going through the Ancestry piece. But
Yeah. I'm going to check it out.
yeah. And then the Salerno draft list, I don't know, to me, that was a gold mine too. So
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that, because my grandfather was they were in Pagani, which is just near Salerno. So I'm gonna have to look at that.
yeah.
And
So,
see if then
and what you can do there, right? Like what I was doing was saying, okay, like when I found out that Giuseppe Sabato, whose his parents were, right, I went through and said, okay, I'm going to search that draft list for anyone named Sabato that had parents that included these names. Well, lo and behold, there they are, right? So there's the brothers or whatever of, my ancestry, right? I had him, but I didn't know who his siblings were. Well, then when you go through and it says, oh, well, by the way, here are these other Sabatos that had the same set of parents. So it's, again, just really interesting, ways to search and look and use the tools that are out there. So.